Recording to the cloud. Okay. Well, hello. You know what we didn't talk about? First of all, hey, everybody. This is Franchon. And how are we introducing you? Because you have so many titles.
You are going to introduce me as Didi, and that's fine.
Okay,
that's
Didi.
fine.
We're going to go with Didi. And we're going to get to who Didi is and all the different caps that she wears in a minute. So this is Healing Conversations with Franchon. This is our first official podcast. Thank you. Basically, before COVID and Corona and all that stuff, several people have asked me to do a podcast. I've actually been on Didi's podcast.
Several times.
Yes, it was so much fun. And people have asked me to host one, to be on one, all these kind of different things. And I've always been, honestly, too busy and not really motivated necessarily to do a podcast. But I've decided that there's a lot of things I want to talk about, so we're just going to do it. This is our first one, and DIVA is my first guest. And so the title of today's episode is You Are Not One Thing. And then the major reason why I was like, okay, really, we're going to do this is because a couple weeks ago, I had an issue with somebody, and when I was reflecting on what the issue was and why we had that issue and all these things that I was thinking about, what I came to was ultimately this person did not know me. And even though they knew of me and they knew me in one capacity, in one of my jobs, they didn't know, they don't really know me. And I realized a lot of people don't really know me. And that's because the hat I normally wear all the time is therapist and trauma specialist, and founder of Healing Your Almond. And I don't really wear a lot of other hats. So people don't get to see me in other lights.
Well, I won't say that you don't wear the other hats. I think that you wear the other hats, but you maybe don't wear the other hats as prominently as the therapist and Healing Your Almond hat.
Yes, for sure. So Healing Conversations with Franchon gives me and my guests an opportunity to showcase all the parts of who we are and all the different titles and all the different sides of our personality. And I'm hoping that as we have different guests and as we talk about different things, people will get to see other sides of me. And then also my guests will get to be other people than who they really like. You tell me about some of your titles and some of your hats.
Oh, okay. So DIVA is my stage name, which stands for Delivered, Inspired, Victorious, Anointed. I do spoken word under that name. I am also an author with DIVA Publishing. I do publish my own books. I've helped other people do theirs. Poetry, inspirational stuff, a little Christian fiction romance. I'm a pastor. I am a life coach. I am... and some other stuff that we'll probably think of later.
Right.
Spoken word artist. I do theater. Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
You're also a mom.
Mom and Nana.
Yes, and Nana.
Right now, full-time Nana. I'm also a Master of Divinity because I will be getting my Master's in Divinity officially on Saturday.
So in a couple of days at the end of the week. And we were just talking about before we got started, you said you've been working on this since when?
I started in 2005, taking one class a semester. I did that 4 semesters until I was confident that I could handle like a course load. And I still had 1 kid in college, 2 in high school, and I was also working full time. So I was trying to figure out how to navigate all of that and go back to school. And I was in my 40s at the time. So, yeah.
Well, I'm so happy for you. And so congratulations. And I am your friend and had no idea you've been working on this since 2005.
Yes, because I didn't have, I started out with no degree at all. And then I got the bachelor's in psychology and now the master's in divinity. Yep.
Nice. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. For all the things, Franchon, that I can think of for today, I'm a therapist. I'm a licensed therapist in the state of North Carolina. I'm a certified trauma practitioner. I'm the founder of Healing Your Almond. I am a sister. I'm a daughter. I'm a cousin. It's probably one of my favorite titles. I'm a granddaughter. Also one of my favorite titles. I'm a friend on a good day, and I am Peanut's mom. I have a fur baby running around here somewhere. He may make an appearance later. So those are all the kind of different hats.
You're a workshop facilitator.
Oh yes, I'm a workshop facilitator. I'm a trauma trainer as well as a practitioner.
That's right.
True. Yeah.
It's like we know we are filling in the blanks for each other.
Yes.
Which goes to show that we know each other.
Right. Well, and one of the reasons why I'm so glad that I don't even know, did you volunteer or did I ask you?
I think I was voluntold. Maybe?
I think you were voluntold.
Yeah.
So, let me tell you why. The reason you were voluntold is because you do know a lot of the different sides of me. Because I've allowed that. I've done a better job. I've done a better job of allowing you than I have other people.
Well, you know why though? Because I'm undeniable. And I just rolled up on you. Because remember the first day we met in the break room?
Yes, after the meeting.
Yes, in the break room. And no, it was before that.
It was before the meeting?
It was before that. Because that day we talked. But the day before that, I saw you in the break room. And after you left, I was like, ooh, she's abrasive.
Yes.
But
what did I say or do? Do you remember?
I don't even remember what it was, but I understand now the Franchoniness. I didn't know about, and there's no other thing to call it. So that's why it has been deemed the Franchoniness. If I had given myself the opportunity that I later gave myself to get to know you, I would not have said, ooh, she's abrasive. But it's not that you're abrasive, it's just that when somebody else is confident and you are not, it is abrasive to your lack of confidence. And I was at a stage where I was still working on my confidence. And it's an ongoing thing. But your confidence kind of magnified my lack thereof. And so that was abrasive to me. And as we had more conversations and got to know each other, and I was like, she's cool people. Because I took the time to just let you show me who you were.
So thank you so much for sharing that and being honest and candid. And for those of you that know either one of us, we've already had this conversation a while back. So we're kind of rehaving it for the benefit of the podcast. But I've never asked you what helped you to kind of push through that, like the first impression of, okay, she's abrasive, but what helped you to push through to continue to get to know me?
Doing my own work. I was in the process of doing my own work. And again, that's another ongoing process. My goal is to be the best me that I can be. And the other thing is, if I'm going to help other people, you can't help other people if you don't really know yourself. If you don't look yourself in the eye and you don't deal with your issues. And I have had lots of opportunities to come face to face with who I am. There's some people that I've worked with in the past, and I would if I would see them, I would go the other way, not because I didn't like them or anything like that, but I knew that they could see through my facade.
Oh, okay.
I did not want people to see through my facade. And so
you would avoid them.
Yes, I like the plague. If I knew somebody could see through all the confident veneer that I had up for the world, I would not get too close to them because I needed to keep that barrier. I needed to keep that distance between me and other people so that no one would know until I was ready to let them see it.
Super insightful. Thank you so much for sharing.
Girl, I told you I do my work. I have to. If you do not do your work, you'll keep making the same mistakes over and over. You'll keep having the same unsuccessful relationships. You'll continue to be miserable because you've trapped yourself. I said miserable. Let me say it right. You've trapped yourself in a cycle. And a lot of times the things that we go through over and over and over is because we've done it to ourselves. We don't want to listen. Going and looking in the attic of your mind and taking out that funky, slimy, ugly, nasty thing that you don't want to deal with. That's why it's ugly and funky and nasty. You don't want to deal with it. But the minute you look at it and you acknowledge it for what it is and allow yourself to feel what it makes you feel, we don't want to be uncomfortable.
Right.
So when you allow yourself to feel what it makes you feel, and then really just examine why, then you're able to let it go. And you can keep the things about it that are good and that matter and that help you grow. And the
Right.
rest of it, you can just put it in the garbage and
Mm-hmm.
keep it moving.
So that's actually our first. So we picked 4 words for today. And we covered a little bit of the first word. Our 4 words for today are honesty, intentions, faith, and mental health. And those words were picked because, as you heard, those fall under a lot of our professional umbrellas. There's some intersection between both of us, and then there's some words that are more your domain and words that are more my domain. But just going back to honesty, I think that for me, what I've learned is I keep facing the same problem until I learn something from it. And even when I learn something from it, chances are I'm going to circle back, but it will hurt less.
Yes.
And it will be shorter because I recognize it. I'm like, oh, I've been here before. Let me do what I need to do to rearrange the situation. And that what I've learned is that when I'm not honest with myself, I'm almost guaranteed to repeat the same problem or the same issue. So it's not really a good time to look yourself in the mirror and say, okay, what role did you play in this?
Exactly.
Like, that's one of my favorite questions that I have to ask myself when I'm upset about something is take a step back and say, all right, Franchon, how did you contribute to the situation? Because ultimately I contributed in some way, shape, or form. Not saying it's all my fault, but some of the blame can usually be placed on me and my actions. So I think we covered honesty. Let's move on, if you don't mind, to mental health.
Okay.
And I just want to, for the listeners that have been following me since October of 2019, we did Flipping the Couch, which was a live demonstration of therapy. And in Flipping the Couch, I basically was myself as the client. But the thing that I just want to make sure everybody knows, because I think it's really important, is that I am a therapist, but I'm also a client. So I go to therapy every other Friday. My therapist is a little bit older, so it's been interesting watching her learn Zoom. So that's just been it's been a fun process for us. But I think it's just really important that people...
I'm sorry, I wasn't in my light. I see now. I'm kind of in it, but kind of out. Okay, go ahead.
I like it in better so I can see your beautiful face, but that's just, yes. I got a natural light thing happening over here.
There we go.
So mental health, that's kind of my just mental health thing that I think it's really important because people hear me say all the time that mental health is important. I'm a huge advocate of trauma and trauma informed, and bringing your business beyond trauma conformed is my, my little statement under my logo. But I also just want people to know that I engage in my own mental health hygiene as well, because it's super important.
It really is. And that was something that I, having experienced trauma at a young age, and, it kind of drove me to behaviors that were self-sabotaging and injurious and self-defeating and blah, blah, blah. And I didn't understand that until one day it was just too much and I had to do something. And that's when I started going to therapy. And so I'm sorry, that is my phone. Whoever it is will leave me a voicemail. Anyway, well, I wear many hats. So, but that was the thing. And once I started with therapy, it actually gave me the tools to self-therapize. But then the other amazing thing is that I have some very good friends who are therapists.
You do. Not just me.
More than one, yeah.
More than one, yeah.
Yeah, so, but I still drop in and out because I think it is, we take medicine for high blood pressure, for arthritis, for diabetes, and whatever else the doctor sends us or gives us. Right. But we don't take medicine for our mental health issues. And everybody doesn't need medicine, of course, everybody doesn't. But we have to understand that it's a chemical thing sometimes. It's a chemical imbalance in the brain sometimes. And if you have that, how are you going to know if you don't go to the doctor, if you don't try to get some help? So yeah, I'm with you on that, advocating for to remove the stigma, because I know that's something that you work really hard toward, is to remove
Right.
the stigma
Right.
from seeking mental health. And I think it's important. So I tell people that all the time. Listen, just because you're a Christian don't mean that you can't have Jesus and a therapist too. Okay?
Amen. Amen.
Because the Lord has given, that's right, I said the Lord has given people the knowledge to
Mhm.
be able to help you. And see, faith is not just something that you put on a shelf like those pretty flowers that you got over your shoulder. Faith is action.
Right.
And when you take action, if you know you can't get this thing together yourself and you take action, then God will meet you where you are in your faith walk, because God responds to our faith. You can hoop and holler and cry all you want to, but God responds to our faith. So your act of faith, if you are listening to me right now, your act of faith should be, if you are suffering from something that you know you can't handle by yourself, go get you some help, man.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And what I've noticed is that when I make a decision about something, or when I'm struggling with something, if I am in conversation with God about it, typically someone or something will kind of appear to help me to work it out.
Mm-hmm.
And it will be in that season. You know, this COVID season for me has been super isolating and just super upsetting. I've been through a lot of personal things that had nothing to do with COVID, but were exacerbated by the
Absolutely.
fact that I couldn't, drive to see you and hang out for a little bit. I couldn't, all the things that I would normally do to make myself go to the beach and walk around, the things I would do to make myself feel better. Most of those things have been taken off the table as a safe option. I can't do them right now. So I think for me, it's just been thinking about, oftentimes I have to say to myself, like, okay, this is what I'm struggling with, and really give it to God, and then have the patience to sit still and wait for God to do some work. Because what happens is God moves. And then I'm like, oh, okay, I see the path. And what I've learned is when I try to do things Franchon's way, because I want it on my time and my way, it does not go well. Things do not go well.
Honey, listen, if you think that you are the only one who thinks that God is a pray-TM machine, and you go to God and you put your little prayer card in there, and you press your little code, and then God is going to give you what you want when you want it, you're not the only one. We all do it. We treat God like a pray-TM machine. But I have learned that when you, just like you said, sit still, that's another action, believe it or not. Inaction can be an action.
It's an action of faith, for sure.
Exactly.
Trusting God, trusting your creator to know your heart, and for you to, be actively participating in that faith. And sometimes that means sitting down. Sometimes that means standing up. Sometimes that means running, walking. We don't know. Every situation is a little bit different. But for me, who's someone who struggles to sit still, I've learned that oftentimes if I don't see the answer, I need to give it to God, and I need to give it some time and be still and have faith that God's going to handle it, because God has handled it my whole life.
Exactly. There has never been a time. And I think those of us who are really honest and process the things that have come about because we have believed and are believers, we can honestly say that regardless of whether or not the outcome was what we wanted, there was always an answer.
Right.
There was always an answer. And I was talking to my daughter today, because her medical situation. She was diagnosed with peripartum cardiomyopathy. And I was talking about the day that I walked in the hospital and saw her. I still haven't processed that, because even now when I think about it, it chokes me up, because I could see that she was almost gone, and I could not, and I still can't fathom my, at the time, 32-year-old daughter being gone away from here before me.
Right.
That thing did something to me. So I had to really just, in that situation, I cooked all the food that was heart healthy. I cleaned everything. I fixed everything. I did everything, but I couldn't control that.
Right.
And I had to just let it go and trust that it was going to be all right. And it's getting better, but it was hard, because we are used to especially people like us who are type A personalities and pretty much control what's going on in our environment. We think that we can do it, we can fix it.
Right.
And there are some things that are within our power, and there are some things that we are supposed to fix, and that's our act of faith. But again, like I said other times, the action is inaction, and just sit, be still, and know.
Right. Yes. One of my hardest lessons that I work on daily. I'm going to be honest with everybody. It's not something that I've figured out completely, but I've learned that when I'm struggling, it's probably because I need to sit down and pray and breathe somewhere for an extended period of time, not 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So our last word for today, which we've covered a little bit, is just intentions. What are our thoughts about intentions? What do we want to tell our listeners about intentions?
Well, for me, at the beginning of this year, I fasted and prayed for God to reveal to me a vision for my church for the year. And what he gave me was be intentional, honest, intentional, honest, authentic, faithful, and kind. And I had to figure out, what does it mean to be intentional? What does that mean? What does it look like? That means that you don't just go running off willy-nilly. What is it that you want, first of all? Now, set your sights and your actions moving in the direction of that thing that you want. That's being intentional. You got to set your intention. This is what I want. This is where I want to go. Okay, how can I get there? You got to have action steps. I think all of these things tie in together, because you really have to be, first of all, intentional about everything, about your faith, about your honesty. Let me tell you the story about the chicken, okay?
Okay.
So I went to the Walmart right down the street, because usually when the kids were going to school, I would go, before I would pick them up, I would go and get food, whatever they wanted for dinner, their little snacks and everything. So the lady in front of me had a whole lot of bags and stuff. So the girl put them on her, and then she started ringing my stuff up. So I get home and I have a warm and juicy lemon garlic rotisserie chicken in my bag. I know I didn't buy a rotisserie chicken. Okay. So I was like, I need to take this back. And my daughter was like, Mama, if you take it back, they're going to just throw it away because they can't use it. I'm like, yeah, you're right. So we ate the chicken, and it was delicious. But I went back the next day and I paid for that chicken because, first of all, it was the right thing to do. And second of all, I knew the moment I bought that chicken home, my intention was to go back and pay for it. Why? Because it was the right thing to do. If I'm being intentionally honest,
right,
even though nobody else knew about that chicken, but the deli's inventory would reflect at least one chicken short. You know what I'm saying? So somebody would have to pay for that. So I went in the next day and I told the guy I need a label for a rotisserie chicken. He looked at me. I'm like, yeah. And I told him how delicious it was yesterday, but that I didn't pay for it and I needed to. So that's the type of thing that you're doing when you're intentional. You're intentionally honest. You're intentionally authentic. It is, nobody wants to be vulnerable. Being vulnerable is a scary thing. But if you are authentic about who you are, there are times when you are going to be vulnerable, and you got to sit in that thing. And you got to understand that other people are just as vulnerable as you. Nobody wants to feel that. But we have to, if we're going to live our lives intentionally, that it all falls under that. You got to be, there's a song that says, be what you are and live the life. Plain and simple. And when you are who you are and you embrace that, like you do, Franchon, because you do. And it actually gave me permission, being your friend, to be more authentic and to embrace myself, even with my insecurities. And so when the insecurities come up, instead of saying, ooh, she's abrasive, look at myself and say, okay, it's not that she's abrasive, it's that her security and her confidence is abrasive to my insecurity.
Right.
So,
You know, it's so funny. People use the word authentic to describe me so often. And I'm so honored by it. But honestly, it's not something that I'm super aware of. I just do it. And the reason I just do it is because I was raised that that's the only way to be.
Mm-hmm.
So what I've learned is that anytime I try to be something else, I try to be quiet, or I try to speak a certain way,
Mm-hmm.
or I try to use certain words, or stand a certain way, or dress a certain, oh gosh. The few times in my life I've tried to dress differently than what I normally dress, I feel so uncomfortable and
Mm-hmm.
so insecure. And I just am crawling in my skin.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't wait to get out of whatever situation I no doubt put myself in.
Mm-hmm.
That I've just, so my authenticity is not intentional. It's kind of like I just show up.
It's necessary though. It's necessary for your peace.
Yes, absolutely. Because I cannot go to sleep at night worrying about how I'm going to be something I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
Like the few times in my life, like I said, that I've tried it, it did not go well at all. So I typically don't do that. I try my best to just show up as myself, and my vulnerability, I know, scares people because I'm real honest about it. When asked, when given a platform,
Mm-hmm.
I will answer just about anything honestly, or I won't answer it at all, but I won't lie.
Yeah.
But I just don't know how else to be. So I appreciate that everybody calls me authentic. And what I love about being authentic is that I hope that everybody that's around me says, well, she can be herself, I can be myself.
Yeah, there's a poem by Marianne Williamson. She kind of messed herself up with me when she was running for president. But anyway, she has this really good poem. What is it? And they do it in the movie Mr. Carter. Our deepest fear.
Oh,
Our
yeah.
deepest fear is not inadequate.
Yeah.
Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. And there's a line in there that talks about how when somebody shows up and they're confident in their themselves, it gives other people permission to do the same. And that's what your authenticity does. It gives other people permission to do the same. Now, if a person is not quite ready for that, like I was not when we initially met, then it's abrasive and you kind of shy away. But it takes time. And then, it's just sometimes different personalities, whether you like and respect each other or not, sometimes you just cannot, you can't gel, you can't mesh, you can't work together.
Right.
And it's just because the truth of the matter is you cannot have two number ones. It's just not possible. One is a 1 and one is a 2. And if the 2 are number ones, it's going to be a little bit of conflict, and that's just life. And it doesn't mean that one is less than the other, or one is bad and one is good. It's just sometimes you know how magnets of the same pole push each other apart.
Right.
It just is what it is, and you embrace it, accept it, and keep it moving.
That's definitely an area that I really need some work in. I am very good at being a leader, and I'm very good at being not present. I'm not good at the middle. Yeah. And there's a lot of middle ground in between there. So my attitude is, if I see somebody leading a situation, I feel like they got it, they're competent. Okay, good. You got this. Have a good day. And I remove myself from the situation, not because I don't care about that person or what's going on, but because in my mind, it's already being led.
You're a fixer, Franchon.
Right.
You're a fixer. If a situation doesn't need fixing, then it doesn't need you.
Right. But people take that as I don't care, as I don't want to be a part of it, as I think I'm better than them or that situation, which is not.
But that's not the case. Know that's not the case. Right. So, sometimes you just have to let things be what they are.
True. I think for me, the intention, what I would like to start doing is taking the time to have conversations with whoever that said leader is, to say, listen, you got this in my mind. So I'm going to leave this situation, not because I don't care, but because you got it. So unless you need me to do something specifically,
or
I'm
say,
here for
and
you.
If you need me, not in case you need me, and if you need something, please feel free to reach out, and I'm on it. Reach out. And I think when you extend you created a bridge then, to be, and a bridge actually is built from each side. So, you know.
True. You know what? Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Hey, I'm your friend, girl. You notice how we do.
Yes. Thank you. Okay. So now listen, this is the reason everybody should be listening to this show. Because I know y'all got questions that nobody really wants to ask me. But every episode, every guest gets the opportunity to ask a question that they've always wanted to ask me. And it can be something that I've answered in the past or not. It could be something that is public knowledge or not. And I will answer the question as honestly as I can, or I will ask for a different question. So, Didi, you were the first person to get the opportunity to ask me a question.
So I think I have my question. You stand at the intersection of a very unique perspective as a person who is Native American and has a grandfather who is like an icon in the civil rights movement.
Yes, ma'am.
So how is your experience as being at that intersection? How does it make you different from those of us who just maybe, especially in this time? I'm a little bit older, so I remember the water fountains and all that kind of stuff. I saw that stuff.
Right.
But for maybe some younger people who haven't ever seen those things, how would you kind of help them to understand that this is not just, this thing is deep. It's not just some people just don't like us, that this is really deeply woven into the fabric of the founding of this country and the founding documents? How would you help them to kind of see that more three-dimensionally?
Oh, goodness. Well, I think I'm going to address it just personally, first of all. Okay. I just want to say thank you for acknowledging the different parts of me, because often one of my biggest heartbreaks, especially since moving to Wilmington, is people without saying so have very much tried to make me just Native or just Black. And I'm not either one of those things completely. I am both of those things completely, if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely.
And also I have a white family that helped raise me when I was younger. So to me, culturally, I am African and Native and white and a little tiny dash of Puerto Rican. So I have all those, and I had a Jewish step grandmother, so I have all of these different cultures that were part of my life. And that is just from 0 to 16, not even considering my adult life. And I think sometimes it's really the thing that upsets me probably the most is when Natives and African American people want to get into an argument with me about who has it worse. Mm. And I'm like, okay, it's not good on all sides. No. First, this country started out from a place of genocide. Mm-hmm. And we're less than 2% of the population in terms of we being natives. And then we continue to enslave people for hundreds of years. Mm-hmm. So that's what this country was built on. And there's a lot of tensions right now and a lot of things happening between all these different races. And I just want to say, I don't see it as Black versus white or Native versus white or this or any of that. This is the us versus them to me. There's those that wake up in the morning and realize what happens in this country is not okay. Mm-hmm. And then there's those of us that wake up in the morning and feel like it's business as usual. Mm-hmm. That's the us versus them. Mm-hmm. And when you look at that us versus them, there's a lot of people on the color lines are very blurred. It's not a color line. Yeah. It's more of this country needs to make some changes and all of us need to be a part of that.
So it's oppression versus lack of oppression, or maybe even oppression versus the ability to see that oppression exists.
I think a lot of people don't want to be honest with themselves, like what we were talking about, because mm-hmm. oppression is very much an individualized experience. Mm-hmm. And we have historical oppression that existed in the generations before us, which I have the advantage of being aware of because of who my grandparents are. My grandmother is Lakota from Standing Rock Reservation, and my grandfather is Joseph McNeil from Williamson, North Carolina. They are both Googleable, and they both are legends in their own right and come from amazingness and have created amazingness. So I get the privilege of knowing them and being raised in that kind of environment with that awareness of the oppression that existed before them and how we as a family are no longer going to engage in that. So I didn't have to spend time trying to figure that out because I was taught that from like 8 years old. I think that's a big part of what makes me different from other people of color is a lot of people of color are figuring it out in adulthood in terms of what the oppression is and how they're participating in their own oppression, and how we sometimes still do that. And then that's our first layer, right? And then once we have some understanding of that, then we have to deal with white folks that are walking around here asking questions like, well, what do I do? How do I help? That's not my job to teach you that.
Yeah. Well, you know, now what I do when people ask me that question, I say, be the bridge. Yes. My girl Shannon will get you right together.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes. I have 3 white women that I've dropped the title of well-intentioned white women. They're just 3 white women who are also dear, dear friends of mine. And they have spent a lot of time educating themselves about racism and about oppression and about what their role is in that and how to help with that. And they did that all on their own, had nothing to do with me. But now I have a great relationship with them because I can just have a relationship with them human to human.
Yes.
Instead of the Native African woman and the well-intentioned white woman trying to work it out.
Yes.
We don't do that. We didn't need to do that because they took it upon themselves to educate themselves and do their own work about their privilege and what that looks like. And I love them so much for that. So I'm where you are. When people ask me that question, I actually have gotten permission to give their emails. And I slide over and I say, these are the 3 emails of the women I would recommend that you talk to. I hope that goes well. Have a good day.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's really, I think that we have been indoctrinated to believe that it's our responsibility to educate.
Absolutely.
But that's really not it. That's really not it. And also, I was listening to a podcast today, Pass the Mic. It's a community of Christian something, I don't know. But anyway, it's really good. And they were talking about how people say, well, you never were a slave and I never owned slaves. So what are we talking about? But the other thing is, you didn't fight for the First Amendment, but you benefit from it, you know? So it's time for us to stop using that as an excuse too. And just like you said, people just need to do their own work. This is 2020, man. I read about the thing in Wilmington or Pender County, wherever it was, where they went to the boy's house and tried to go in his house and armed, you know, this is 2020. It's time out for that. And it's a good thing. They could have gone to the wrong house and got a surprise, you know? And I just think that we cannot continue to be silent in times like this. We cannot also continue to allow folks to say to us, well, there must have been more to the story. I am quick to cut somebody smooth off. I don't care how long we've been knowing each other.
Right.
I don't care how you used to go to my mama's office when she worked at the complex. I don't care. If you say something like that, then that means that deep down at your core, there's something about you that thinks you are better than me. Therefore, we can't do it, boo. I got to move on. I'm going to pray for you, okay? I'm going to ask the Lord to enlighten your mind.
Didi's from the South, in case y'all were wondering.
I sure am.
One thing I'm just going to touch on is you said that people doing your own work, like people think it's our job as people of color to educate. And the thing I want to just kind of lift up as a trauma specialist, the reason that I will not engage in those conversations with well-intentioned white people is because that's not my job. It's just not my job. And to have to talk about it with someone who is not Native and someone who is not of African descent and has no frame of reference, it's re-traumatizing for me to have to quote statistics to you, for me to have to explain to you that we are less than 2% of the population, for me to have to explain to you that my Black brothers are being shot for running. It hurts me to have to explain that to you, that the mass incarceration of people of color in this country is absolutely astronomical and not okay. For me to have to sit there and have to argue with you about it literally not only angers me, but hurts me.
Yeah.
And then for people to get upset because I won't come to the table to have these ridiculous conversations of things that you can learn in a book if you would take the time to educate yourself.
Hello.
Like, you don't need, and then you're not offering me any money. You want me to volunteer? No, ma'am, no, sir. I'm not doing that. And I think that we as people of color have not felt empowered and have had a lack of awareness about what it is that re-traumatizes us. And I think the only reason that I have that privilege is who my grandparents are and the fact that I'm a certified trauma practitioner.
Exactly.
So I'm aware when something is re-traumatizing me, and I have the privilege to not allow it in my life.
Yeah. Well, listen, I'm like this. Mine is less technical and all of that. If it disturbs my peace,
right.
I will not allow anything to disturb my peace because I have fought hard for my peace. I'm not going to let anybody take it away from me. If you can't see what's right in front of your face, then that means that you don't want to see it, because here's the truth. When you acknowledge that for centuries, human beings were treated like animals, then you also have to acknowledge the ancestor that you thought was so great who participated in it. And you have to acknowledge that that person is not so great. You have to acknowledge that the generational wealth that your family has comes from having a workforce that you didn't have to pay. Right. So, and people don't want to do that, because then when you acknowledge that, then reparations becomes a real thing and not just something that you can say people feel entitled to, so people don't want to give up. If you acknowledge all that, you got to acknowledge your privilege, your institutional, your systemic, your systematic privilege that you benefit from.
Right.
And then you might have to stop benefiting from it. And I don't want to, listen to me, okay? If I could go where I wanted to go unfettered and do what I wanted to do without ever being questioned, if nobody had ever followed me around in a store, if nobody had ever questioned whether or not I could pay for something when I walked up to a counter, I would live my life differently too. You live your life differently when your place in society is not questioned.
Right. You also live your life differently when you were raised with a family that teaches you society was not created for you.
Exactly.
And that's where my privilege comes from, is my grandparent,
right there.
Especially my grandmother, sit me down and she said one day, as I was sobbing tears because the white girls would not accept me, and she said, this country was not created for you. It was not created for you, and it was not created by you. Exactly. But guess what? You're still my granddaughter. So when you leave this house, you still have to be my granddaughter. And she didn't hold me and coddle me and hug me. And, a lot of people have opinions about that. But I, as an adult, am so thankful that she explained to me that this society was not created for me, and that I have to be my own person. And I have to still take my traditions and my cultures with me everywhere, no matter what, no matter where I'm at. Mm-hmm. And it gives me so much strength and so much peace in my identity and who I am. So even though a lot of people have a problem with it, Black people, white people, Native people, all kinds of people have a problem with the way that I look, the way that I talk, the things that I do. And I'm like, you know what? That's y'all and your problem. I worked that out. Right. I worked that out when I was 8, going home crying, mm-hmm. and had the privilege of having a grandmother to sit me down and say, listen, this world wasn't created for you. You got to make your own way, find your own way. So that was a great question.
Well, I do what I can.
Jeez. Okay, so as we close, we are going to post this on all the places that I can possibly think of. That's going to be my
I
homework.
think I would like to put that on my podcast as well, Franchon.
Please. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
So make sure you send me the recording so that I can do that.
Okay, we will do that. I'm going to look into all the different subscriptions and how much things cost and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to do an audio and a video. And
listen, let me just apologize for not being at my cutest today.
What
if
are
you're
you
watching
talking
this
about?
on video,
Listen,
because I am a little cuter than this, but just not today.
Actually, I think you're gorgeous just the way you are. And
well, thank you. This is my COVID cuteness.
Oh goodness! Listen, this set was designed by accident, so.
But it looks really cute. But mine, is. But that's okay. Next time, if there's a next time, I'll maybe it'll be AC after COVID.
Oh,
and
okay.
then yeah, our world now is going to be BC before COVID and AC.
Yes.
And we are all suffering from PCSD. Post-COVID stress disorder.
Oh, yes. That is definitely a thing.
And so if anybody else uses that, I started it, so you will pay me for that. Okay? Thank you.
The specialist on the podcast did not, however, start it. Okay, so wherever you see this posted or hear this, we encourage you to make comments. The easiest way to get to me is Healing Your Almond. Healing Your Almond has Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. Healing Your Almond is all those places. So if there's any particular topic that you would like to discuss, or if you would like to apply to be a guest, you may do so. The biggest advantage, because I don't have that big of a following right now, I would say the biggest advantage of being a guest is you get to ask a question that is then I'm going to answer, that is then going to be public. So please feel free to apply to be a guest. I'm sure we'll have Didi back on again. And
to get in touch with Didi,
yes, please.
You can actually go to www.divatude, that is DIVA, the number 2DE.com. My podcast is the Divatude, spelled the same way, perspective. Okay? All right.
Yes, and there's all kinds of podcasts there. So please go. When you find Healing Your Almond, there's just going to be one little baby one because we're starting. But thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, Diva Didi. We appreciate you.
Of course, Franchon, you my friend, girl.